it's like somebody who is like in far right or far left. Or you now realize that there is a new generation, okay, that we're neither left nor right. And then what do? You just have to quickly move yourself back to the middle, stylishly. But if you insist that you are left or you are right, now the wave that is sweeping through his country is neither right nor left. So he's finding the common ground gradually. So yeah, I didn't know that Kenyans have health insurance or would have one. By the way, with what we have heard a lot about the Kenyan, government, so to say. I didn't know they have people they are also paying. I mean, who gave them all this idea of sharing money to vulnerable people, poor people, right? Because most of the money they are sharing are mostly money that they borrowed. But somehow he's listing them as part of his achievement in all sectors. And he was pretty much articulate enough to throw out numbers that only Kenyans can tell us if they are true or exaggerated or they are lies. If you want to lie to me, be articulate about it. All right? Look me straight in the face and lie. Look me face in the eyes and straight in the eyes and lie to me. I want to see how good you are. I want you to convince me so that I can know how to take you on. You know what I mean? It's not somebody who just will never really say anything meaningful. We are going to go to Nigeria. You're going to listen to their politicians soon. And you understand that except for some of you Nigerians who always kind of overrate yourselves because they told you are a giant of Africa, you are so behind. Your politicians are so behind, honestly. But they feel on top of, in fact, Nigerian politicians sometimes want to feel like they are American politicians, like, yeah, we have this, we have that. When it comes to intelligence, when it comes to like being a proper public officers and all that, a proper politician, you just know that you have garbage that is comebacks as your political class in Nigeria. And it does. Now, here is the second part, where Ruto had to tell his appointees, we've had enough. The party is over. And then he went on to say, after this, there's still going to be more measures I'm going to take. I want to, possibly a cabinet that is now broad-based, not about politics and all of that, even though they have to satisfy all blocks, okay? The political class, the private class, what do you call it? The private sector class, the other, everyone, like even the Gen Z and all of that is now throwing it all out there and say, you know what? Now we would have to pick people who are going to help us fix this country now. Now let's leave all this politics and all that for now. I mean, you would want to believe him. Let's go back there. Now finish what you are saying, Ruto.
Making it possible for every Kenyan to have access to treatment without the burden of having to fund it. On the measures I announced last week, barring state and public officers from engaging in harambes, I want to inform the country that the Public Fundraising Appeals Bill is now ready for publication tomorrow. However, even with the progress we have made, I am acutely aware that the people of Kenya have very high expectations of me. And they believe that this administration can undertake the most extensive transformation in our nation's history. Recent events that necessitated the withdrawal of the finance bill, which will require a review and reorganization of our budget and fiscal management, have brought us to an inflection point. Upon reflection, listening keenly to what the people of Kenya have said, and after a holistic appraisal of the performance of my cabinet and its achievements and challenges, I have today, in line with the powers given to me by Article 1521 and 1525B of the Constitution and Sections 12 of the Office of the Attorney General's Act, decided to dismiss with immediate effect all the Cabinet Secretaries and Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, of the Cabinet of Kenya, except the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs. And of course, the Office of the Deputy President is not affected in any way. I will immediately engage in extensive consultations across different sectors and political formations and other Kenyans, both in public and private, with the aim of setting up a broad-based government that will assist me in accelerating and expediting the necessary, urgent, and irreversible implementation of the program that we have, including other radical measures and programs to deal with the burden of debt, to explore raising domestic resources and revenues, expanding job opportunities, eliminating wastage and unnecessary duplication of a multiplicity of government agencies, and slaying the dragon of corruption, consequently making the government of Kenya lean, inexpensive, effective, and efficient. During this process, the operations of government will continue uninterrupted under the guidance of principal secretaries and other relevant officials. I will be announcing additional measures and steps in due course. Thank you very much, and God bless our great country, Kenya. Asanteni sana.
That's it. And with immediate effect, he said, with immediate effects. So now, so those who are from Nigeria, all of you watching me from Nigeria, or a typical Nigerian, this one can never happen in Nigeria. It will never happen in Nigeria. Because the criminals in Nigeria are more or less like organized criminals who have carried out what you can call the state capture. There are some stuff that we shouldn't leave out in this whole Kenyan scenario. They have corrupt system too. But for some reason, their judiciary stood behind the people. Not just standing behind them, but being fair enough to just be so neutral that they protect those the government wants them to use the law to break. the military of Kenya, apart from the overzealous ones who followed the order of their murderous commanders and all that, and then following the order of Ruto, majority of them didn't really turn up, as it would have been for some reason too, unknown. For those who turned up, they didn't become murderous in trying to protect the bruised ego of a man, one man. So, not having the full control of the institutions like they do in Nigeria also helped a lot. And they kind of helped to send some fears into the heart of a supposed strong man of Kenya, Ruto. They are all it's going to take if this whole thing continues. It's going to be a mutiny within their own military. And guess what? It will just be the loss for all of them. Somehow, it's probably advised that if this whole thing continues, man, these guys will soon begin to disobey your order. And then the next thing to save the country from anarchy, you would have to go. So that is why it is still looking like impossible in Nigeria. So when somebody said the reality of Nigeria is different from that of Kenya, it is not really true. It is the mindset of an average Nigerian who will actually join you to condemn all the bad stuff, as long as you don't name the criminals who are perpetrating all these bad things. Let us all just agree that all our leaders are the same, John. All these leaders are just evil. All these our leaders, now God go punish them. Look at what they are doing. They are just stealing. But when you begin to name their leaders, then they will begin to get offended. Well, why are you naming it? Is it because he's a Yoruba man? Why don't you go and name those ones? Are there no other Hausa? Are there no Yoruba, Igbo? Are there no other so and so who are also thieves? What about? You see? Everybody will tell you it is so wrong what they are doing to Nigerians. So, honestly, these people, but they want it to remain that way because some of them, those who are not directly benefiting from the rots, they are looking forward to their turn when they will benefit from the rots. They are kind of having the conversation around minimum wage right now, okay? And the senators in Nigeria, they are fighting over seats. I think that is where we're going to stop first before we go to the Ask Old Rock. Akpabiole and his own predecessor, Robert Stamplawan, they gave some show today, right? And even though the country is in such a mess, a serious one, look at your senators and get, and get mad if you have to see the mad people that are running Nigeria or ruining Nigeria responsible for whatever you are facing as we speak. The guys who are being paid over 400 million naira every year just to what? To still steal from you? Let's go to their Senate, by the way. Akpabiole versus Robert Stamplawan today.
There seems to be unanimity of opinion that we separate the two items. And the first one we should take should be the synchronization of the time of sitting. And thereafter, the other one, you can still take it, but in case if you lump them together, if one fails, it means the two have failed. But let's separate it, take this other one, then go into the general principles, merits and demerits of the creation of the new committee. Bearing in mind the fact that we have a committee on foreign affairs, we have a committee on diaspora, and all that, and we can expand their scope of activities, and judiciary and human rights. But if we cannot expand their scope of activities, that's when I think we can now go into creation of a separate committee on diaspora. Senate President Emeritus.
Of the Senate. The amendment we are seeking to do. So I've listened to you. And twice or thrice you have mentioned we should synchronize with the House. I have thought there will be another explanation, probably a more scientific explanation. Mr. President, I don't know the basis at the moment for which we want to shift our sitting from 10 to 11 and end at 3 p.m. To me, we have more energy, our heads are clearer in the morning, and 1 hour into the day probably would have lost some energy. And I feel, Mr. President, if we work between 10, if we sit in plenary between 10 and 2, our committees would do better than when the committees would have to go and sit between 4, probably, and 6 or 7 or 8. So if we don't have any reason except that we have to synchronize with the House, I think we need to look at it again. But if we have other reasons that we must change, that will be fine. But if it is just synchronized, the House may have their reasons why they sit at 11 and close at 3. But here I don't see the reason. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Well, yeah, by 11 o'clock was started by you in the 9th Senate, particularly during the period of the COVID.
It was during the COVID. In fact, we even reduced the number of days. And then we started sitting from 11 during the COVID period. But the rule stayed at 10.
The COVID,
yeah.
Our rule says 10, but we came and made the tradition of this 11. In fact, the only thing that we changed was to add additional day. Because during that COVID period, you were sitting twice in a week. But I said no, that since there's no more COVID, we should sit 3 times in a week. And then, of course, we also maintain what we saw, the 11 o'clock. But now we are saying that we have not been able to justify the 11 o'clock sitting unless we reflect same in our rule. And the idea of 3 o'clock, in my view, is not correct, because it doesn't mean you must sit till 3. It simply means that we can even, if we don't have enough things to do, we can close at 1. We can close at 2, to enable our colleagues to go for committee sittings and other matters related to the proceedings of the Senate, such as clearances and all that, and meeting of government functionaries. So the only aspect of it was just to legalize it so that people don't have the impression that you are sitting at 11 o'clock and your rule says 10 o'clock. But if we must leave it as it is, it's not a problem. But let's hear from the public. Yes,
I want to make a very passionate appeal to our distinguished colleagues. Of course, I listened to the Senate President Emeritus, His Excellency, distinguished Senator Ahmad Lawa, and it was very apt. For me, I believe the issue should go beyond trying to reconcile our timing with that of the House of Representatives. As a matter of fact, there had been some days that we sat and the House of Representatives did not sit. There had been moments that we had sat for a whole week with the House of Reps being on recess. So that cannot be the fundamental reason. The fundamental reason, distinguished colleagues, is that as distinguished senators, being on this floor is only one out of at least the 3 principal functions that we perform. Effective representation on the floor is one. Our committee assignments is another one. Over 70% of distinguished senators are chairmen of committees. And then, of course, thirdly, we have our oversight functions. Aside from other things that we have to engage in our various constituencies and on a national scale, and sometimes on an international scale.
Those are Nigerian senators. They're debating whether to sit early or to sit later in a country in crisis. I mean, that's what they do anyway. Just sit there, talk, and all of that, and get paid. Because of our time, I'm going to go back there. So let's just finish it once and for all. And I'll show you something else that you probably should know too. Let's continue.
President, is that a lot of times distinguished senators have reasons to go to bed late. And there is no point having in our rule book that our sitting time is 10 a.m. And every day we sit at 11 o'clock. Of course, there are some distinguished senators who will be here 10 for 10. But there have been a lot of times that even you sat here, Mr. President, at 11 or 10:30, and we had to wait for some of our distinguished colleagues to come so that we could form a quorum. It's important that we walk our talk. If our rules had said 10 a.m. and we had not been able to sit 10 for 10, I think what is most important at this point is what distinguished Senator Yahya Abdullahi said, the former Senate leader, that if we say it is 11, please let it be 11 o'clock. So I agree with distinguished Senator Ahmad Lawa that it cannot just be because the House sits at 11. As a matter of fact, he also talked about energy. If it's even about energy, our younger brothers and sisters in the House of Representatives have more energy than we do. So if they will not sit before 11 a.m., I think it makes sense that we sit, we amend our rules to read 11 o'clock, rather than our rule book saying 10 a.m. and we don't sit until 11. For me, this is the basic justification, and I would just like all of us to see it from that perspective so that we can save some time.
What I've said, but I don't want to be misquoted. They will say Akpabio again. Because as Senator Dingy, there was a time that I watched the sittings of both chambers when we had the third term crisis. And when the question was put, he failed in the Senate while the House was still debating, and somebody had to run from here to go and alert the House that the third term bill had failed first to go for second reading in the Senate, and therefore there was no point continuing. I don't know if you understand. And so they now put their heads together, and then abruptly they stopped further debate because the thing had died, since it takes two hands to clap. So that is one of the reasons you could think of. And another aspect of it is the fact that it would be nice for us to go into a small closed session and discuss exhaustively, so that members of the public will not misunderstand our discussion. Then we come back and take the decision. So I want to urge the leader of the Senate, because this is not the main thing that bothers on the lives of Nigerians at the moment. When the distinguished Senator Mark was Senate President, and even the practice he met on ground, Senate was sitting at 2 o'clock, because they used the morning period to meet with the diplomatic communities, to do a lot of engagements with civil servants and public officers, and then they start their sitting by 2 o'clock. And so officially they had 2 o'clock to 5. And I know that many of you also would like to do the same, meet with most of the agencies, conclude, even open your public hearings before coming for sittings. But it's not for the public to know, because the public only thinks that we sit here alone. We don't sit here alone. We do a lot of other things off camera. So the Senate leader, as much as I agree with you, I still think that we should go into closed session. So to have 5-10 minutes discussion before we reopen this debate. So if you don't mind, I wish that you move a motion for the Senate to revert to closed session to have further debate on this.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, this is
nuisance Lele.
I actually wanted you to see everything to the end. At least we all watched and listened to Ruto, the most hated man in Kenya right now. We all heard him reeled out what he's been able to do or what he intends